go back to the home page, and you're done. So that's pretty much it for me, Dave. I appreciate your time. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be sitting behind the scenes from Dave and help answer questions. Thanks, Dave. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keith. Glad everybody had a chance to hear from Keith. He will be the one that as he just mentioned, that you will be communicating with if you do have any questions as we go through the system. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, this is primarily directed to new users of Matrix, or those who are here just for a refresher. But to anybody who hasn't yet necessarily been in the system, or maybe just wants to get their system set up, the very first thing that you need to do in the system is to personalize it. And this is where we're going to actually start from, to personalize the system, making sure that all of your information is correct. Because this is important, not only, of course, for yourself, but also for your clients. So we want to make sure that all of the information that Matrix shows is up to date. And where we're going to do this from is the Matrix settings. So this is called the utility menu up here in the header. If you left click on your name, you will see an option for settings. So if you come into the settings, more specifically in the My Information section, this is where you're going to set your information in the system. And you see the very first tab here includes information. So this is information that is typically pulled from the roster. So you won't see necessarily all of that information. This does give you the opportunity to add some of your own information and override that as well. So if you do see some information that may not be correct, maybe it's an email address, or maybe your name, maybe there's a spelling issue. Of course, you'll definitely want to be in touch with the board, make sure that they have it correct on their files. But outside of that, this is where you can set your information to make sure that it's properly represented publicly. So go through, and again, we're not going to go through every single field here, but just make sure that all the information that it shows, or any information that you'd like it to show, is correct. And then once you've done that, any type of updates, just come down to the Save button down at the bottom and select that. Next over is the header and footer section. So this is a header and footer that you can, well, actually, there's a couple of different options here. One is you can upload your own custom header and footer, or you can use any of our generic ones. But this is typically used in any type of reports that you may want to generate. For example, maybe a CMA, or maybe you print off some displays for your client to share. These are the headers, and of course down here the footer information that will be shown with those reports that you generate. So as I mentioned a few moments ago, if you'd like to use any of our default banners in the header, this is your selection. So you just come through, and here we'll just choose a different one here. Maybe this is one that I choose, and of course then I would go in and preview and set it up exactly with the information that I'd like to include. So all of this information that you see here, my name, my profession, my contact information, all of this information from the drop-down list, this information is pulled from the Information tab. So that's why it's really, really important that the information on the Information tab is correct and up to date, because this is the information that we pull over into these other tabs to share publicly. So in this case, again, you can go through and set whatever information that you would like to appear in your header. If you choose to use a photo, which I have here, of course, you would just select to update your photo here and upload one of 3 photos to use, and that will be saved. That photo will be saved in a repository, which you can actually use elsewhere as well. But for this example, we would just add it for the header. If you choose not to use a photo, maybe you've uploaded one, you just don't want to use it anymore, just select no photo, and then that will disappear. As I mentioned, you do have the option of uploading your own custom branding as well. So maybe some of the banners that you saw on the previous page aren't really speaking to you. You want to use your own banner? Well, you can upload your own custom image here. And again, it gives you the dimensions of the image that it's expecting to use. This is outside of the Matrix program, but if you do want to find a really, really great editing tool for that, you can go to canva.com. That's CoreLogic.com. That's in no way affiliated with CoreLogic, but it is a great resource if you want to do your own image editing. It's very, very user-friendly, and you can make your own banners there. So maybe you want to add just your own personal logo on there and just maybe tailor it or customize it for your own uses. That would be a great option, is just to create your own banner and then upload it here. When you actually do upload your banner, and whether it's a custom banner or one of the default banners, you do have the option of changing some colors as well. Just again, because maybe the text may disappear on the background. If maybe it's a really colorful background and you have very colorful text, it won't be as legible. So you can come through and you can change some of the properties of that banner as well. So again, we're not going to, I'll let you play around with that, but I'll just show you what these things do, and you can experiment with it and have some fun just making it your own, essentially. And as I mentioned down below, this is for the footer on those documents. So if you do want to include a footer in any of the type of documents that you do generate inside of Matrix, this is where you would essentially create or add that footer information. So it works the exact same way as we do in the header, where you choose which fields that you'd like to include based on, again, the information that you added in the information tab here. And if you don't want to include a footer, just simply select no footer for me. And then again, we're just going to save that. CMA cover pages. So we're not actually going to get into CMAs today. However, we do have a feature in Matrix called a CMA, and this is an area where you can set your default cover sheet information. When you do create a CMA, you do have the option of adding a cover sheet to that. Now, instead of adding your own personal information or your own branding essentially to every single CMA that you create, we give you this section here to set the default. So you come in here and you set your default information that you'd like to appear on all of the cover sheets that you generate when you create a CMA. And as I showed you a few moments ago in the header and footer, you can also have the option of adding a photo. And you can see here, this is the same photo that I would have added over in the header and footer section. I'm just repurposing it, and I'm setting my view of that photo. I will mention, just on a side note, typically something that I bring up during the CMA portion, but I will mention as well, when you do create a CMA, you do have the option of using this cover sheet information that we've just created here, or if for that specific CMA, if you do want to change the information on that specific CMA, you can override the information. It doesn't change your CMA cover sheet default here. It just overrides it for that one CMA. So you do have the option. This is just a really great resource to add the default information for your contact information. But again, it's worth mentioning, you are able to change that on a per CMA basis if you do want to change it. Beside that is the email signature. Now, this is the signature that is going to appear on all of your outgoing messages from Matrix. So when you do send notifications to your clients for maybe any properties that you find for them and you send them off in a notification email, if you have a signature created here, this signature will also be included on that outgoing email message. So the way that I did this, and we're not going to get too much into the specifics on how to essentially what all these buttons are, but I will recreate this for you very, very quickly. For my photo, what I did was I just selected my photo image, and then if you remember, I mentioned that repository earlier. When you do upload a photo, it essentially goes into this repository. So I think this is the one that I chose, and then I chose a little bit of horizontal space, it looks like, maybe 5 pixels, just to separate the text from that photo. And then, and then you can see this one's a little bit larger. So here, let's change the size on that as well. So maybe for the photo width, I'll do something like, maybe that's a little bit too small. Maybe we'll do 60. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's a little bit better. And then for the name, and I'll just add the email address. And that's it. So I could go through and I could add some additional information, but I did want to show these two. My name, if I do want to, let's say, for example, bold that, works like any other WYSIWYG editor that you're probably familiar with. So I just bolded the text. And then for the actual email address, what I did was I selected it, and then I went to the link up here. So just select the link, and then here you can see I have actually a couple of different options for links. I have the URL, and this is great if you want to put your website, and this is going to treat it like a website URL, but this is an email address. So I'm going to choose email, and then I will add my email address there. And then any other information, this is just pre-populated information if you'd like when the user selects it. We're not going to add any of that. And for that, and that's it. So that's how I got my bolded text and how I added a link to my actual email. And then I would just save. But for now, I am going to delete all that and move on to the agent webpage. Now, the agent webpage, to be honest, is not something that is typically used very much anymore. I will explain what it is. This is a feature that we initiated many years ago before agents actually had web pages. Web pages are very easy now. If you wanted a professional web page to represent you or your business, this is something you could go to a third party to have them create for you fairly cheaply. Before website creators were a thing, this is something that we added to Matrix just so that agents did have some sort of a presence on the internet. So we gave them this feature so that they could add just a little bit of contact information, a little bit about themselves, and share that URL with the internet. So it's still available, but again, there are more robust solutions out there. So if you wanted a professional presence on the internet, I highly encourage you to go to a third party and have a website created for you. However, I will go through this if, again, if you are just starting out in the business and you wanted some sort of presence on the internet, this is a great short-term solution for you. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that this little website here is enabled. So you select that, maybe disabled by default. So you want to make sure it's enabled. This is what your URL is going to be. So it's HTTP, in this case, HTTPS : in this case, David Marsh. I can change that if I'd like, but I'm just going to keep that for now. And then the rest of it here. So this is the website. Essentially, this full website address is what you're going to share with friends, family members, prospective clients. And then adding a title for your web page. This is, in my case, it's very simple. And then you could just add some information down here in the WYSIWYG editor. And again, I've gone in, I've made this probably a little bit more complicated than I need to, but I just added some HTML information. You can just start typing in there, and anything that you type essentially will appear on the web page. And then below that, these are just the different areas of the web page that will be available for your client. And I'll show you this in a few moments here. And map areas. This is a option that if you do want to allow visitors to your little website here to be able to do searches for properties, then you can give them that ability down here. And of course, if this is going on the internet, you probably want people to be able to contact you. So this is a little area where they can include a sign-up form so that they can sign up and get some additional information for you. Down here, if you do have a website, a URL, for example, that you're using, maybe www.mybusiness.com, you can set that down here. And this is something that your registrar, wherever you registered that URL from, you'll need to contact them, make sure that that they have something set up for you. And then anyway, you can add that URL down here, and that's essentially what connects it to this little website that you're creating here. It's essentially so that when somebody types in www.mybusiness.com, it will automatically forward to this little website. And then when you save it, show you really quickly what that looks like. And again, this is just a little quick representation of what we very quickly went through. I didn't spend a lot of time on this because again, we do have some more important things to go through. And as I mentioned, this is not a feature that's used very often, but I did want to show you what the possibilities of this was if it is something that you're interested in setting up before you actually commit to a possibly more expensive third-party solution. And as I mentioned, all the information that you choose to include will be available here for your visitors to see. And you can see here, this is the URL that I would share with my prospects, or just have on the internet available for people to view. And finally, beside that, this is our One Home tab, and this is what's going to set your information in the One Home portal. Now, if you're not familiar with what the One Home portal is, One Home portal is essentially a repository for your clients to view all of the content that you send them. So whenever you send properties out to your client, what they're going to do is they're going to receive a notification letting them know that you sent them some properties. So when they select the link on that notification, they will be taken into what we call the One Home portal. And we have a separate session. I encourage you to sign up for that if you'd like to see, well, not only what your clients see when you send them properties from Matrix, but I'm also going to show you as part of that presentation how that impacts you as an agent back inside of Matrix. So I'm going to show you the full scope of One Home as it pertains to your client and as it pertains to you, the agent. So I really encourage you to sign up for that. I believe that's coming up in a couple of weeks, but that's sort of the basis for this tab. And the One Home tab is essentially where you are going to set your information that you want to share publicly with your clients. So as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure you go through and make sure that all of this information that it shows is relevant. And assuming it is, you would come down to this next section here. And this is where you set just a little bit more of a personal welcome message to your clients. And again, all of your clients are going to see this when they access their portal. So this is not for a specific client, this is just more in general. So this is just more of a little general welcome message. This is also a great little tool if you are going away, maybe on a vacation. You just want to announce to all of your clients that you're going away. Maybe you have some forwarding information for them. This is a great resource to be able to add that information as well. And finally, down here at the bottom, this is just a One Home walkthrough. So this is, again, another little great resource. If you do have a video, in this case, this is more of a walkthrough video for clients, but if maybe you have a video of some property that you'd like to promote, you can add that video down here. And it accepts YouTube, and it also accepts Vimeo. So you can just add that video for all of your current clients to be able to view. Everything that I just showed you in the last minute or so in the One Home tab, we're going to be covering again during that One Home session. So if you want me to go over it again, you will see it during that One Home presentation. But the bottom line is, this is just an area that allows you to brand yourself to your clients in the One Home application. All right, so keeping with the theme of the first-time user of Matrix, if you are new to Matrix, after you've set up all of your essentially contact information, all of your branding inside the settings section, you probably want to make sure that all of your contacts are entered in correctly. So to do that, we're going to go over to the My Matrix section. Now, the My Matrix section is essentially your section in Matrix. This is where you essentially do all of your own configuration in addition to the settings section. But if you want to come in and make sure that all of your contacts are set up correctly, you're just going to select contacts from My Matrix, and you can see here I've got all of my contacts entered. Now, we're not going to cover this in too much detail, but I did want to show you that we do have an import section. This import section is for CSV files. Again, we're not going to get into what a CSV file is, but it is essentially just if you're familiar with an Excel spreadsheet, it's like an Excel spreadsheet. And this is a great little resource if you have a lot of contacts to bring over into Matrix. You can pull them over into Matrix through your CSV file, and you just upload them here. And again, we're not going to get into this in too much detail because typically, if you're in the system, it's your contacts have already been brought over, generally speaking. But if you do want to import some additional ones, you can do that from here. What I want to show you here is when you actually do have contacts, essentially just how to manage those contacts. Now, there's one thing right off the bat is you want to make sure that all of your contacts are up to date and they're relevant. Sometimes maybe you have some contacts in here that are just sort of just kind of hanging around. They're not contacts that you've used in many, 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 many years. And if you have an overwhelming amount of contacts in here, I'm going to show you a really quick way to really essentially clean up your contact page. So let's say, just as an example, I'm just going to select a small handful here, maybe these 4 here. These are 4 contacts that I haven't used in quite some time, and they're no longer really relevant. What I can do is I can add them to a inactive contact section. So again, it just sort of takes them out of the active contacts and cleans up my contact page a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these to inactive. So you can't set a active contact who has auto emails currently. So you want to make sure that any, and of course, if these were actually contacts that I haven't used in a while, they probably wouldn't have an active auto email. But if you do have any active auto emails, you want to make sure that they're deactivated first. So we'll just use these 3 as an example, and we'll set these to inactive. All right, so now those 3 are inactive. Now, if you want to find all of your inactive contacts, maybe you want to pull one of them up again, maybe they suddenly now are becoming active. There's a little chevron on the left here, just like that. And then, of course, we're looking at all of our active contacts. We want to choose, in this case, our inactive contacts. And here's our 3. And maybe let's say it is my contact, Bjorn. So Bjorn is now becoming active. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to set Bjorn to active. And these are our 2 now remaining inactive contacts. So let's go back and just view our active contacts. And you can see here, Bjorn is now back. So I did want to point those out. This is how we filter between our inactive and our active clients. And as I mentioned just a few moments ago, these are all of our actions. So if we do want to do any bulk actions with our contacts, this is where we would do it from. Just select the contact that you want to work with and then choose what action that you want to take on that contact. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to add a brand new contact. So this is for my contact, maybe Dwayne. Dwayne is a brand new contact that I've just started working with. So in this case, I'm going to add their first name and their last name. Now, all of this other information is optional. The only mandatory pieces of information when you add a contact into the system are the first name, the last name, and their email address. So in this case, Dwayne Pipe, and that's his email address. Now, while we're on email addresses, I did want to mention as well that we have the ability to add up to 5 email addresses per contact. Now, why would I want to add 5? Well, you're going to see this if you do join me for the One Home presentation. You're going to see that we have something called group members. And a group member is essentially somebody that's going to work with my client. So maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member. We have something in One Home that allows security to your client's One Home application. So if they don't want prying eyes looking at all the sensitive information inside of their One Home, then they can add them to what's called a group member. So as I mentioned just a few moments ago, we can have up to 5 email addresses per contact. So if I did want to add another email address, that would essentially be the email address for a group member. So in this case, maybe it's Dwayne's wife. So let's say maybe Jane. And you can see here that I've separated all the group members' email addresses with a comma. So as I mentioned, we can have up to 5 email addresses. One of those is going to be for our primary contact, and then the other 4, up to 4, would be for any group members that our primary contact would like us to add. So we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail when we get into One Home. But as far as the mandatory information for a contact, that's all we need is the first name, last name, and at least 1 email address. And all of this other information describing this contact is completely optional. Now, we're not, again, because this is a beginner's session, we're not going to get into too much depth about this, but I did want to mention those 3 pieces of information that we need. So I'm going to save, and you can see now I have Dwayne as a contact. And that's how easy it is to set up a contact in Matrix. Now, as far as managing a contact goes, just again, going back inside of Dwayne, we're going to see a little bit more of this in a during a one home presentation, but just very quickly to take you through it. Anything that you do for a contact in Matrix is going to be found in this contact section. So this is why I really, really encourage everyone, if you are going to do anything in Matrix for a specific contact, I really highly recommend that you associate it with that contact. And typically, there's always going to be a contact drop down when you do something in Matrix so that you can associate it with that contact. So in this case, let's say, for example, I'm creating auto emails for this contact. This is where I'm going to see all of the auto emails that I've created for this specific contact. So if I want to come in and manage that auto email, I know exactly where to find it. Same thing with carts. Now carts, we're not going to get into carts today, but a carts is essentially just a repository. So if I'm going through creating searches for, well, maybe for myself or maybe for specific contacts, if I add specific properties into a cart, well, if that cart is associated with a contact, then I can easily find it. And this is really useful if I have a lot of different contacts that I'm working with in the system, and I find properties that are maybe perfect for different contacts. I can add it into their cart, and then it's very, very easy to find those properties again because I know it's in that contact's cart. And again, this is where I would see all those carts. CMAs, again, if I've created a CMA for a specific contact, this is just where I can not only view, but I'll also manage those CMAs from. Just a collection of all the emails that I've sent to this one specific contact and any type of searches that I've created for this contact inside of Matrix, I can find here. And again, it's worth repeating. If I do create searches inside of Matrix and I save those searches to use at another time, I probably want to save that search under the specific contact so I can easily find it again. Because again, if I have maybe 100 different searches that I've saved inside of Matrix, maybe for different contacts, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for me to find the one specific one that I created for Dwayne. So it's a good idea if you do create a safe search to associate it with that contact. And we're going to do that a little bit later on. I'll show you how that's done. But this is why I encourage that you associate safe searches with contacts so you can find them here. Inside of OneHome, our clients have the ability to save searches if they've activated their OneHome account. We're going to get into that during our OneHome presentation, but you as an agent will be able to see all of their safe searches that they've created inside of OneHome. That's invaluable, very, very important for you as an agent. So you'll be able to see all that here. And reverse prospecting, we're not going to get into that today. It's more of an advanced feature, but essentially reverse prospecting, it allows, reverse prospecting as a concept allows listing agents to be able to see who has been sent their property. Now, they will never be able to see your contact's name. So if I have a listing agent that has a property and I've sent that property to my client Dwayne, the listing agent will never see that my client Dwayne Pipe has been sent his property. The listing agent will only ever see a reference number. And I'm going to show you that reference number in a few moments, but I did want to give you that background of what that means. So on this main dashboard page here, again, this is all information that we'll be going over for OneHome, but this just is more of a dashboard panel for this specific client. Gives you as an agent just a very, very quick view of some activity for that specific client inside of their OneHome application. And finally, just to put a pin in the contact section, I did mention there's a reverse prospecting that allows the listing agent to see that your client has been sent their listing. So this is really useful if, let's say, for example, the listing agent's having an open house coming up. They see that your client has, well, not only been sent their listing, but also maybe has favorited their listing. So that tells the listing agent that you have a client that's very, very interested in their listing. So that listing agent may want to reach out to you and let you know that they have an open house coming up. So they, as I mentioned, they don't ever have the name of your client or any of their contact information, but what they do have is a reference number. And if a listing agent ever reaches out to you and shares a reference number, that reference number pertains to a specific client. And this is where you can come in and see that reference number here. So let's say, for example, a listing agent reached out and gave you the number 0008, then you would, was it 8? 00008. Then you would know right away it is for your client, Jim. So all you have to do is type in that reference number into the search, and that will pull up the reference number for that specific client. And then of course you can reach out to your client and say, hey, Jim, I was just told by the listing agent that there's a great open house coming up for the property that you really love. Let's go take a look at it this weekend. So that's what the reference number pertains to here. Is generally just a reference number for the listing agent to be able to get in touch with you and let them know to identify a specific client. All right, so we're gonna head back to the dashboard. And I want to go over just maybe some of the panels or some of the widgets, some people call them, on the dashboard that are important to know. Again, not only as a first-time user of Matrix, but also for veterans of the system. So first of all, what are widgets? Widgets are really just quick access points to other features that you've typically used recently in the system. Now, these are customizable, so you can move them around and organize them however you'd like to have them organized. In this case, I actually have them organized exactly how I'd like them to appear. You can minimize them if, let's say, for example, they're taking up a little bit too much screen real estate. So you can minimize the ones that you don't typically maybe use on a regular basis, but you still want to see them. If there's maybe one or two that you don't really ever use, and again, they're just taking up valuable screen real estate for you, just hover over top and you can close them. And if you do close them and suddenly realize that you do want to get them back and maybe use them again, they will all be found in what's called the additional widget here. Now you can see the additional widget is closed, so I'm going to maximize that, and then you can see all of the widgets here that you've closed. So again, if you do want to use them again, just simply select it and then drag it out to where you'd like it to appear. Some of the widgets that you may use on a regular basis, if you are a listing agent, you will see a collection of your own personal listings here. This is a good one to always have expanded. You could, of course, minimize that if you'd like as well, but this is a good one to have expanded because it will show you warnings on here, but it's also just very, very quick access to listings. If you want to modify them or manage them in any way, you can just access them from here. I'm going to show you another way coming up in a bit, but this is just, again, as I mentioned earlier, widgets are really just quick links to commonly used features or more recently used features in the system. It just saves you having to click around to get to that same place through multiple clicks. You can just access it on the dashboard here very quickly. And on that note, with the external links section, so this is a collection of some of the external links that that the board has found very, very important, and they want to make easily accessible for you. So this is in the external links section, and again, tends to take up a lot of room. So if you want to minimize that, that's great. I tend to leave mine open. So you'll find them here in the external links widget, but you will also find links in the links section. So if you want to come here and find a lot of those same links, they're there. But as I mentioned, this is a great area for quick access to the commonly used features. All right, I'm going to get into two of the most commonly used and most commonly misunderstood widgets on the homepage, which are the hot sheets and the market wedge. So we're going to start out with the hot sheets. Now, what are hot sheets? Hot sheets are really just a search, but they're kind of a special type of search. A hot sheet will show you activity in the system. So hot sheets are a great tool to use if you want to see activity. Now, you can use a hot sheet however you'd like to use it. That's what it's there for. If you want to see activity in the system, we're going to go through it in a moment here. But how I find it's typically used is just to do general overall activity searches, which you can use it for. But the real power of hot sheets is meant to be used with individual clients. So let's say, for example, you've been away maybe on maybe a vacation, maybe gone away for a few days or for a week, and you have many clients that are active, but you have a specific client that's looking in a very, very specific area. A hot sheet would be a great tool to use if you want to see the activity for that specific client while you've been gone. So again, I'm going to show you how to do that and make sure that that it's used appropriately for that purpose. But if you want to do just general overall status searches, just to see what type of activity there's been for status or maybe price, another option would be to use the MarketWatch. So that's really the main difference between the hot sheet and the MarketWatch. MarketWatch is great for overall market changes. So again, price changes or status changes in the overall market. Hot sheets, where it really shines, is for individual clients. So give you an example of that. We've got, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got 7 default hot sheets here in the hot sheet widget. Now you can have up to 10 hot sheets available. So that means I can add 3 of my own, or actually I can even delete any of these default ones if I'd like, but I can have a total of 10 hot sheets to use. So what that actually means is I can have up to 10 clients represented here. So if I want to see 10 specific activities for 10 specific clients, I can create multiple hot sheets for each of them. So just as an example, let me show you how this typically works just as far as the workflow goes. So let's say I wanted to run maybe I have Farm and Ranch, and I want to see all of the activity for Farm and Ranch over the last, let's say 7 days. Maybe I've been away for 7 days, so I select Farm and Ranch, select it, and I see over the last 7 days, we can see there's been 4 status changes, price changes, etc. 4 changes essentially. So that's how we would run a hot sheet, is choose how far back we want to go to see that activity, and then of course which property type that we'd like to see that activity for. But as I mentioned, it can definitely be used like that. And if you have been using it like that and you want to continue, by all means go ahead. But again, if you want to be able to see activity for a specific client, then you can really customize this for that client. So let's say, for example, I have a specific client that's looking for some residential property. Now I could choose residential over the last, like I say, maybe, well, we'll say 7 days again. And we can say residential activity over the last 7 days has been 246 changes. But that's not very specific for my one client. I've been away for the last week, and I'm really just interested in the changes in the area that my client's looking for, in the properties of a certain price range that my client's looking for. So this is not going to show me that information. And that's why I say this is a great tool to use if I want to see very, very specific changes for a client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to customize. And of course, in this case, we want to customize residential. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select edit criteria, and I'm going to select, in this case, map, because again, my client's really only looking for a very, very specific area. So let's say maybe this area right here. And there's other ways. This isn't so much focused on the form itself. This is just more the workflow, but I want to make sure that the area that I want to see the changes in, I've isolated. So I've done that with the map shape tool, but of course you can do that with any of these other fields here. The other thing I want to know is what maybe changes in price there's been. So I'm going to add price increase and price decrease, because I'm not really interested in all these other changes. If prices, if properties are sold, or if they've gone to leased or expired, I'm not interested in those type of changes. I just want to see that while I've been away, I want to see what properties have had a price increase and a price decrease in my client's area. So again, we're not going to go through all the different fields on this form, but these are the main things that I'm interested in. So I'm going to save that. And of course, it's no longer just the default residential. So what I'm going to do as well, don't have to do this, but I highly recommend that you update the name as well. So I'm going to call this maybe for my client, Dwayne, say Dwayne's price up, down, and area, because these are the things that I've changed. So these are the things that I want to see. So in this case, show me all the price increases, decreases, and in that specific area. And of course, I can move this up and down in the order if I want. Here, we'll put that first. And that's it. That's how easy it is to customize any of my existing hot sheets. So now, when I've been away for a certain period of time, let's say maybe instead of 7 days, maybe just the last 3 days, I've just gone away on a little mini vacation. While I've been away, I want to see any price changes over the last 3 days in my client Dwayne's area. So I'm going to select 3 days for my time frame, and I see that in Dwayne's area for residential properties over the last 3 days, there's been 4 price changes. Some up, some down. Looks like these are all down, but I'm going to see all of those. If there were any increase in prices, we would see those here as well. So that's how easy it is to customize any of my hot sheets. And I really encourage you to do that. If you've got customers and you want to see just very, very specific changes in the criteria that they're looking for, go ahead and create multiple hot sheets for them. Just while we're here, let me just show you really quickly. Maybe I don't really represent commercial properties. I want to free up an additional spot. I can delete that. So I'm deleting the commercial, and again, frees up an additional spot maybe for one of my own custom hot sheets that I want to create. But if I want to get that back, maybe I get a customer who's really hot on commercial, buying commercial property. I can come in, select add, and then from my property type dropdown, I'm going to choose commercial again. And of course, I can rename that anything I'd like, but for now, I'm just going to leave it as commercial and add it back in. Move that up, and that's it. So I went through that a little bit quickly as far as the time frame goes. So let me just really quickly go over this. I think most of these are pretty self-explanatory. 24 hours today, 3 days, 7 days. That's more quick pick timeframes. New only, this is going to show me just the new activity since the last time that I looked. So let's say, for example, cross property. Now, cross property, if you're not familiar with the term, it just means all property types. So it's a collection of, instead of me doing a search for all residential activity and then a separate search for all commercial activity and a separate search for all land activity, cross property just combines everything at once. So if I want to see just the new only, well, this is probably going to show me everything, right? Which is 68, which is great. So it shows me everything. And then let's say I go off and I do things in the system, maybe come back, maybe, I don't know, maybe an hour later, and I want to see just the activity for cross property that I haven't yet seen. Maybe it's an hour later and there's probably a new activity that I haven't yet seen. So I'm going to select new only because I've already seen most of it. I just want to see the new stuff. So now I select cross property again. Now we probably won't see anything. Yeah, we don't see anything because I just selected it a few moments ago. But if it had been an hour, maybe we see 5, 6, 7, or 8 properties that have had some activity over the last hour. But for the purpose of demonstration, that is just going to show me the new activity that I haven't yet seen. This session, this is going to show you all of the activity that you've already seen. So let's say, for example, we'll use cross property again. So we should see okay, there's 67. So there's 67 essentially activities: expired properties, sold properties, new properties, price increases, price decreases, all of this activity we haven't yet seen during this session. However, I go off, I do things, maybe an hour later, I maybe build a CMA, run some stats, come back an hour later, I want to see this session again. Well, we would see our original 67 plus any new activity. So maybe there's been 10 additional activities, we would see 77 activities. Now we're probably going to still see the 67 because it hasn't been long enough yet. Yeah, still see the 67. But again, in the interest of this demonstration, assume that it was an hour later, we see 10 more activities, and then we would see those additional 10 added to the 67, which makes 77. So in a nutshell, this session is going to be an accumulated total. It's going to show you everything that you've already seen during this matrix session, plus any new ones as you go through the same session. New only is going to separate them. It's going to show you everything that's brand new only. So if you run it once during the session, it's going to show you everything. If you run it again after that, it's just going to show you the new ones that you haven't yet seen. And finally, custom time frame. Well, by definition, hot sheet is essentially for recent activity. And in Matrix, we define recent as the last 30 days. So if you want to see activity for any of your hot sheets that you create over the last 30 days, so maybe you take a nice long 30-day vacation, you come back into the system, you want to see all of that activity that you've missed over the last 30 days. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to choose the 30-day time frame, and we'll choose our client Dwayne. We want to see all the price increases and decreases in Dwayne's area over the last 30 days, which would bring us back to, I believe, would be the 31st. Select OK, run, and we see that in Dwayne's area over the last 30 days, there's been 10 properties that have had a price increase or a price decrease. Now, I went through that a little bit quickly. Let me show you one additional option that you have with custom time frame. Is down here below that. This is going to show you activity within a specific day. So let's say, for example, we probably won't see anything here. We may, but we may not see anything. Let's say between 6 a.m. this morning and say maybe 10 a.m. this morning. So in the 4 hours this morning on the day that we're actually running this hot sheet, if I want to see any activity, if there's been, in this case, any price activity in my client's selected area, we can run that, and there hasn't been. But if there had been, we would see that activity. So it essentially gives us the ability to get very, very defined results based on a specific time frame of the day that you're actually running that hot sheet. All right, so moving on to the Market Watch. So as I mentioned, the main difference between the hot sheet and the Market Watch, well, let me tell you the similarity first. As I mentioned earlier, it's really just for finding activity. That's it. They're both exactly the same in that respect. They both show you activity in the system, whereas the hot sheet will allow you to create individual hot sheets for specific clients. A Market Watch is going to show you general overall activity for the entire system. So this is a key point because by default, it is showing me activity for the entire system. So if I want to see activity for, let's say, for example, in any of these areas here, for example, new listings, back on markets, price increases, price decreases, all of these different statuses here or price changes, I would run just the default Market Watch for the entire system. And in this case, not a lot of information because we're just looking at today, but of course from the drop down, if I want to go maybe the last 7 days, get a little bit more data to work with. So I want to see all of the brand new residential properties over the last 7 days. All I have to do is select, and here's my 64. So as I mentioned, this is why the Market Watch is great to view status or price changes for the entire system as a whole, where hot sheets is great for individual clients. So if you're not interested in the entire system, maybe you have just a very, very select area of the market that you typically like to work. So even though you're represented in the entire system, there may just be a very specific area that you typically tend to focus on. So what you can do with the Market Watch is very similar to what you can do with the hot sheets, is you can come in and you can customize the market so that it represents your specific market. So to do that, very, very simple. We're just going to select customize, and then kind of the same thing that we did with the hot sheet. Just come in and customize it for your own needs. And we'll just keep this simple. Let's say that maybe this is the area that I typically work here, right? So it's very, very, very specific. So I can come in and I can customize it for my own very, very specific needs. So that's my market. Again, I can add any of those other fields that I'd like, but I'm just going to keep it simple for now. And now what I'm looking at, because this has been customized, you can see that here, it's been customized. Now it's been customized to my market so that when I log into Matrix, I can see the activity for my specific market. So I come in and I say, oh, well, this is the activity for today, which doesn't look like a lot. So let's say maybe I want to try maybe a different property type. So maybe commercial property. So I can come in, and again, this is for the entire system. So just like residential, I will have to come in and customize it from my market. Now, I have been asked in the past why it doesn't just keep the same customization. Well, that's because you may represent residential properties in one certain area, be very, very comfortable with that area, but be more comfortable in a different area for commercial properties. So this does allow you to come in and individually customize each property type according to your own specifications. So for this, I would just have to come in and customize, in this case, commercial for the area that I typically represent. But it will retain, so if I want to go back to residential, you can see it still has my my customization from before. All right, so now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of Matrix. What I would say is arguably the most powerful feature in Matrix, which is the search functionality. So whether you're a brand new user or you're a power user, you will probably be using search in some capacity. So this is a section we're going to cover search functionality. I'm going to show you everything that you essentially need to know about searching in the Matrix system, starting with the different property types to search. So if you hover over top of your search, you're going to see several different property types here to choose from. So we're going to use residential just as an example, but I'm going to show you as we go through this, everything that I do here is applicable to the other search forms. And that's really all we're dealing with here, are just different search forms. And let me pop over to cross property just as an example. So I'll come over to cross property. And as I mentioned earlier, cross property is really just a collection of different property types to search. It allows you to search multiple property types all at once instead of doing separate searches. So you have a client, I'm just going to use a really extreme example here. You have a client with $1 million, says, I don't care what you spend it on, here's $1 million. So you want to see what's available in the system for $1 million. You can come over to the cross property type, and here you have all your individual property types listed. So again, just doing a general search for, in this case, it was like $1 million. So let's say we'll just do, well, I'm going to put 1,000, but you can see here by selecting this is just saying it's in millions, adding additional thousands to it. So you can see there's 194 matches. So there's essentially, well, I could actually do 0 to, I could probably do 0 to $1 million. So that's going to pick up everything between $0 and $1 million. So you see there's 5,000 plus matches. And of course, we're probably just interested in the active properties. So you can see now we're at 1,786. Again, just more of an extreme example, but I wanted to do that just to point out the fact that you do have your different property types here for cross property. So it does give you the ability to search all different property types at the same time. If I just wanted to do residential, well, I could select residential here, and of course, select some sub-property types down here. But this brings us back to our residential search form here, because it's essentially the same thing. If I'm just choosing one property type to search, I might as well just use a form that's dedicated to that. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm just going to come over to a residential search form, and you can see here all of the fields that have been added to this residential search form are potentially, more probably, going to be different than the fields that are available in any of these other forms here. But we're going to use residential just as an example. Now, you may want to do a search for a field that's not here by default. So what you're going to do in that case is you're going to come down to an additional field section down here, and you can see I've already added one. You're just going to select Add Remove, and this is where you're able to add any of these additional fields that you'd like to include that may not be available on the default form. So I'm going to come down and just select these random ones. And you can see they've been added here. Let's find if there's anything over here. Okay, so I wanted to pull up this here. Just if you do see this message appear, that's just letting you know that one or more of the fields that you are trying to add are actually already on the form, so it's not going to add it twice. But as far as the other ones go, this is where we will see those added. These are always going to be available for you on this form now. I don't have to add these every single time. So add them in whatever order that you'd like to place them in. Again, you can move them up and down accordingly here. But once you do add them, they will always be there, so you don't have to add them again for this particular form. Now, I also wanted to go through just very, very quickly some of the fields that you might come across, some of the functionality with those fields. For example, let's say, we use this one here. So sometimes for possible use here, sometimes you'll see 3 radio buttons, sometimes just 2, as you see in most of these, but sometimes you'll see 3, and, or, and not. Default is always on or, and that's giving you the option of selecting multiple items, and Matrix is going to look for any of those items. So a property can have this item, or can have this item, or can have both of those selected items, but it has to have at least one of those items to be returned in the results. When you select and, Matrix is looking for this item and this item. Has to have both of those items. If a property does not have both of your selected items, then it is not going to be returned in the result set. It has to have this one and this one. Not is actually used really efficiently for long lists. So if you have a really long list, this one is not a long list. It looks like there's only four items in this list, so not the best example to show. But let's say I have a list with 100 items in it, and I want Matrix to find maybe 98 of those items. Well, instead of going through and selecting 98 of the 100 items, it's a lot more efficient if I just select 2 of the items that I do not want included in the result set. So Matrix will, by default, look for all of the other, in this case, unselected 98 items, but it will not find properties and present properties that have those 2 selected properties. So again, or selected items. It's just a lot more efficient way of excluding items from a very long list. I showed you this a few moments ago. This is a price. This is where we'd add our price. In this case, if I wanted to add maybe all properties that are $1 million, I would just select the additional zeros here. That just tells Matrix that I've left off the trailing thousands. So in this case, if I deselect that, I have to make sure that I add the 3 zeros. But in this case, by default, I prefer to keep this like this. And if I want to do a range, let's say 1 million to 1.5 million, that's dash 1.5 or 1500, is going to find all properties between 1 million and 1.5 million. Same thing with bedrooms and bathrooms. I'm looking for all properties that have exactly 2 bedrooms. I just say 2. If I'm looking for properties that have 2 or more bedrooms, 2+. And if I'm looking for properties that have 2 or less bedrooms, just say 2-, and it's going to find all those properties. Same thing with bathrooms. So if I'm looking for 3 or more bathrooms, just say 3+. Now, let's say, for example, this is, and this is just all sort of random information that I've added here, but let's say, for example, this is a criteria that I add on a regular basis. Maybe there's specific areas that I tend to do most of my searches on. If I want to search in for this criteria on a regular basis, I don't have to go through the process of adding this same criteria. What I can do is I can set this as my starting default. So just select the settings icon here, and then whatever you've set will now be your starting default going forward. And just to show you that, let's say I've just logged into Matrix and I come in and I want to do another residential search. You can see that all of the criteria that I've set is still there. And again, this is really useful if you find you're using a form with specific fields on a regular basis. You're always going through and adding maybe specific major areas because that's where you tend to do most of your searches from, or maybe certain zip codes, et cetera. Just go ahead and set that as your starting default, and then you don't have to add that every single time. If you want to change or remove your default, you can set it back to the defaults just using this link here, or what I typically do, just set clear, and then, well, you can just clear for that one search, or what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make the cleared form my new default. So again, if I just logged into Matrix and I come in and I want to do another residential search, see, I have a nice clear form to start with. So let's go ahead and actually just do a search. Let's do a search for active properties, and let's say a price range of, let's say $750,000 to maybe 1.6 million, with let's say 2+ bedrooms and say 3+ bathrooms. Now, down here on the button bar, you see there's a total of 112 matches. So that's a real-time count of exactly how many properties will be generated based on the criteria that I've just added. So a couple different ways that we can actually view those results. We can select results down here on the button bar, or we can select the results tab up here. Either way. And I'm going to select the results tab, and you can see here are my 112 results. Now this is showing me all of the results in the entire system. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I may not be interested in the entire system, or more importantly, my client may not be interested in the entire system. So what I can do is I can isolate the properties in a more specific or general area. Now there's a couple different ways that we can do this. We can go back to the criteria here, and as I showed you earlier, we can go through and we can select individual counties or major areas or zip codes, et cetera, et cetera. So we can go through and select things that way if we'd like. That's one way, but these are more predefined. What I want to do is a more specific search. And to do that, I'm going to use the map search. So I can get to the map here, or I can just select the map tab up here. So these are those same 112 properties that we saw in the results tab over here, but now they're just being shown in the map view. Now, how do I isolate very, very specific areas using the map? Well, we have something called map shape tools. And we have 4 different tools to choose from. We have the radius tool, we have a rectangle tool, we have a polygon tool, allows you to get very, very specific, and you have a freehand tool. So I'll show you all of them. So let's say my client wants to, let's say maybe find all properties within maybe 15 miles of a school, for example. Well, if I want, I can type in the address of the school here. I'm not going to because I don't know any school addresses, but if I wanted to, I could just type in the address of the school here and then select enter, and that will add a little map marker. So it gives me something to work from, but we're going to assume that there's a map marker right here. So let's just assume this was a school. So if I wanted to find all properties within a certain distance of that school, again, maybe 15 miles of that school, we can see there's 4 properties that are in that area. And maybe here we'll just use a rectangle. Maybe there's another area just in this section here. So there's another property in there. Let's say maybe freehand or sorry, polygon. Polygon's great if you want to get in very, very close. So let's say there's a specific maybe neighborhood that you want to take a look at. I'm crossing my fingers hoping there's something in here, maybe. Yep, there is one. Fortunately, there's one in there. So it allows you to get very, very specific. And for the freehand, let's just say, I'll just do a large general area here. Let's say maybe something like this. So in my freehand, see quite a few more. So you can add multiple shapes to the map. Now, here's the cool thing is, let's say that within, well, we'll just say this area here. Let's say that within this area, my client absolutely loves this area, but there's a maybe a certain area, excuse me, excuse me. Let's say there's just a very specific area within this area that my client wants to avoid for whatever reason. So what I can do is within any of these areas, I can, I'll use the rectangle in this case, I can create another shape inside of those areas. And let's say in this case, what my client wants to do is exclude this particular area. Loves the whole area as a whole, but for whatever reason, there's an area inside of that area he wants to avoid. All I have to do is hover over top of that little red dot, and then you can see here, I can exclude this area. And then all the properties inside of that area disappear. So the bottom line here is you can add multiple shapes to the map, and you can also exclude areas inside of these areas. Now, when I have these, let's say these, all these listings, in this case, we have 9 properties here. I have all these properties available. My client may not be interested in all of them. So what I can do is I can go through and I can select which ones that they may be interested in. So we have a couple of different tools that we can do, use that for. We have the single select, which is allowing me to select individual ones, or we have the multiple checkbox, which allows me to select multiple properties. So if you do have a lot of properties that you want to select at once, you can use the multiple checkbox icon to do that. And at the same time, you also have the ability just to hover over top of any of these properties and select, and that will open up a little pop-up where you can select that from here as well. But these are the tools that allow you to check them very, very quickly. It's the checkbox and the multiple checkbox. Now, when you do have these properties selected, what can you do with them? Well, you can actually do a lot. And we're going to get into some of these a little bit later. But just while we're here, let me show you. We have, what do you have there? We've got 5 selected properties. So just while we're here, maybe we want to, this is going to be a long, trip, but maybe what we want to do is create some driving directions to take this client on a bit of a tour. So down here on the button bar, these are all of our different actions that are available. So whenever you have selected properties and you want to do something with those selected properties, just take a look down here at the button bar. We're going to get into these, a few of these in a little bit more detail coming up here in a bit. But for now, we just want to create some driving directions. So I'm just going to select the driving directions option. And you can see here, this is what I mentioned about this being a long trip, but this is going to be my driving tour for this specific, these specific properties. Now, this is just what Google has found to be the most efficient route, but for whatever reason, I may want to change that. For example, I may want to add a specific starting point. So Google doesn't know exactly where we're starting from. So what we can do is we can add a specific address here and add that to my, essentially to my tour. And it will automatically find that and plot it and add, essentially create new driving directions based on that. I can do the same thing with the stopping address. So, or maybe even something in between as well. So if I want, I can move that around. So maybe I want to have lunch somewhere. So I can add that in the middle of the list. But the bottom line is you can add customs adding, starting and stopping points for your tour. Maybe there's a property here that you want to change the order of. So just, again, just select it. Maybe you want to start from that property because even though your office might be closest to this one to start from, maybe you're just in a different part of town, maybe closest to your client's property, and your client is closest to this property. So you can move that to first in the list, and of course now just recalibrate your directions based on that. Once you do have your directions all created, then of course you can email them and print them out if you'd like to take them with you as well. And as I mentioned at the top of the session, if you do email them, your client will receive a notification for that property in their email, and then they can open that up and look at it online. All right, so we're going to head back to our results. Again, same results in this case. I just want to show you a few different things that you can do while you're here. Here, let's deselect those for now. So this is our default display. So this is a single line display grid, and it contains all of the fields that your board has essentially chosen as useful information. However, just like the criteria tab that I showed you earlier, it may not have all of the fields that you'd like to use, or more importantly, your customer may like to see. So what you're able to do is add custom fields to this default display. So in this case, what I would do is just select where I would like to add that field. So let's say, for example, maybe beside the city. So you see you have a lot of different options here to choose from. If I want to remove any of the columns or just manage them in a little bit more detail, I'll show you that in a few moments. But for now, what we want to do is we want to insert a brand new one. So let's say garage. So let's say garage spaces. So in this case, I'm going to add garage spaces because it's not on my default. And this is something that, well, not only I'm interested in, but also my client. When I do send my client information, he wants to see how many garage spaces are available. So this is something that that I want to include. Now you see here, it's taken up a lot of space, probably more space than I need because it's just really just one column. Sometimes you'll have a plus, maybe in the extreme cases, there might be 10 spaces. So there may be two spaces that are necessary. But the bottom line is I'll never need this much space. And if screen real estate is important to me, I want to be able to edit that. So I'm going to select anywhere on the heading here, and I'm just going to call this GS for garage space. And I'll apply that. And now, just like if you're familiar with Excel, same sort of options is just grab the edge of that cell and pull that in. And then you can fine tune it to fit whatever information that you'd like. And in this case, let's say, for example, I'm very interested in price, but it's sort of hidden in the middle there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm just going to pull that over to maybe somewhere, maybe beside the listing number. And let's say maybe there's some information here that, again, not necessarily important to me, might be important to you as an agent, but for me, I don't necessarily need to see the listing agent's email in my main display. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that and I'm going to remove that column altogether. Now, you may find that sometimes if you're trying to just tighten everything up and you pull over a column here, it hides the information that's underneath it. Now, that may not be a big deal because you can always just extend that. But what if you wanted to print this display and share it with your client? Well, you've only got partial information here, and obviously on a piece of paper, you can't slide that over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of functionality here so that I'll never lose any of the information inside of a cell. So if the information stretches longer or wider than the space that's available, I'll always be able to read that. And to do that, I'm just going to select wrap line. So that means that if the cell is shortened, for whatever reason, if it's shortened, then I'll always be able to read the information that's inside of it. So you can see here, this is how wide I've set this address cell for, but maybe I get an address that's really, really, really long, which typically would have been hidden. Now it's not going to because it's hidden, it's wrapped inside of that cell. So regardless of how wide the information is inside of the cell, it'll always be wrapped. So I'll always be able to read it. And more importantly, if I do print this out now, I'll still be able to read, or my client specifically will be able to read the information inside of that cell. So that's a really good tool to use if, for example, you wanted to potentially have some information that's going to stretch wider than the space provided. Just make sure that you wrap the contents of that cell. All right, and just really quickly before we save this, I've got my photos here. So if I do want to see the photos for a specific property, rather than having to open up that property, I've got my map. So it's going to show me where the property is located on the map. And of course, if I do have a street view available, I will see that street view. And then history as well. So this is the history of that property as it's been listed, different MLS numbers, but same property. And then of course, realist tax information. This will take us right to the realist tax record. And if there's any attachments available with that property, we'll see that here as well. But for now, what I want to do now that I've got my display set up exactly as I'd like to see it, I definitely don't want to have to go through that every single time that I generate a search. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that as a new custom display. So I'm going to select on my manage display, and I'm just going to call this, well, maybe it's Dwayne's display. Because again, I'm working with Dwayne a lot, and I've set this up for him. These are the fields that he's interested in. This is the order that he's interested in seeing them in. This way I don't have to do this every single time. So save it's Dwayne's display. Now you see, I've still got my agent single line. That's the default one that the board created for me. But more importantly, now I have Dwayne's display. So I can toggle to that and just view the properties that, or just view the fields that Dwayne is interested in when I generate properties for him. Now, if I want this to be my main default display, so whenever I generate any searches in Matrix, I'm looking at Dwayne's display as opposed to all the fields that the board set up for me, then what I can do now is I can now set this as my default display. So that's what I'll do. So I'm going to set that as my default. So every time that I generate searches now going forward, I'm going to see Dwayne's display as opposed to the agent single line that the board set up. So I'm going to see just all the fields that Dwayne wanted to see in the same order because I now set that up as my new default display. Now, if I do want to get into seeing these properties in a little bit more detail, well, actually a lot more detail, all I have to do is select the MLS number, and that will take me into what we call a 360 display. And we call it a 360 display because this is showing me a 360-degree view of that property. It shows me, in this case, all the listing information, and this is for the agent. So this is all the This is all the proprietary information, sensitive, not necessarily all available to the public. Tax information, photos of that property, history of that property, which again, we saw in the individual icons, we saw those as well. This is just, again, just a 360 view. Parcel map, so this is going to show me essentially the map, but 3 different views of that map. Satellite view. And flood map. And it's color coded down here as well. So always, of course, zoom out if we'd like. And if there's been any foreclosure on the property, we'd see that information here as well. And keeping in mind that we can always toggle into the next property as well, just using the previous and next buttons here. All right, so let's go back to my single line display again, and let's just select a few of these properties just to activate the button bar. We're not going to get into too much detail, but I did want to show you a few items here on the button bar. As I mentioned, the button bar is essentially for actions. So if you want to do something with your selected properties, most of, if not all of those actions are going to be available for you down here on the button bar. So we're going to start with the share link. Now, again, we're not going to get too much more into detail about the One Home application because we're going to more focus on that during the One Home presentation. However, this is somewhat related to One Home in the sense that this is a tool that allows you to share properties, more specifically your selected properties, with prospects. Now, this is a big distinction. I highly, highly, highly encourage you not to share properties with your contacts using this feature. With your contacts, you'll want to share properties using the email or the auto email functionality. And the reason for that is so that there is a record of all of that sharing inside of Matrix. As I mentioned earlier when we talked about contacts, anything that you do with a contact is recorded in that contact section, but only if you allow it to be recorded. If you share properties using the share link with a contact, this does not get recorded for a specific contact. And you always want a record of that sharing with a specific contact. If you ever need to go back and look at the history of a specific sharing with a contact, oh, I sent that to you on Thursday. Oh, this has had a price increase. This has had a price decrease since I last shared it with you. You will need to send that in an email or an auto email for that to be recorded. Sharing using the share link is specifically for prospects. So you're walking down the street, you bump into somebody who is maybe looking for some properties, you don't know them, you mentioned that you're a real estate agent and they're interested in receiving some properties from you. They're not yet a contact, but you are able to share properties with them until they warm up to you and want to make you their agent. So this is how you do that. So in this case, you find these 4 properties, generate a URL, right? Now what you're going to do is copy that URL. Now you may have that in an email address, so send it off in an email. Maybe you send it off in an SMS text message. Maybe they're standing right in front of you while you're doing this search, and they say, "Yeah, just text it to me." So you can send it off in an email or to them, and then if you want to text it to them later, that's fine. But either way, but the bottom line is, however you choose to send that URL, this is what they're going to receive. And as I mentioned, this is somewhat related to One Home in the sense that we still use the same framework as One Home, but this is actually not, well, it is One Home, but it's sort of a watered down version of One Home. They don't have all the functionality that your clients will have inside of One Home. They have a very, very, very base instance of it. So they're able to contact you as an agent, get a little bit of agent information. We kind of discussed this earlier. This is the avatar where they're going to see information about you, the agent. But again, they're not, you're not their agent yet. So this just gives them the ability to browse the properties that that you sent. There's so much more functionality that's available with your clients who actually have an account with One Home. So we'll save that for the One Home demo. but just to put a pin in this, sharing is primarily for prospects. So if you want to share properties with somebody who's not yet a contact, this is how you would do that. Stats. So moving on to stats, two different types of stats. We have chart stats and we have tabular stats. Now you'll see here that chart stats is not yet enabled, and the reason it's not yet enabled is because I have properties selected. So we'll get into that in a second, but with the selected properties, maybe I just want to see tabular stats on those selected properties. And in this case, it's showing me the minimum, maximum, average, and median values of these specific fields. But again, only for those 4 selected properties. So again, a great little tool if you want to run some very, very simple stats on selected properties. Now, the reason why, again, charts wasn't enabled was because I have properties selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect those properties. Now, when I go down to stats, you can see I have stats that are available. Now, what this will do is it will take all of the criteria that I've created here, and it will pull it over into my stats feature. So you'll see that when I select stats, select charts, you can see I've got my map that I created, and it's got all that criteria that I added over here as well. So why do we have this feature available? This is a great feature to use if you want to run stats on specific criteria that you've generated in a search. So, I mean, we're not going to get into stats today, but let's say, for example, I wanted to come over here and run some stats. So I could come over here and I could create all my criteria, come in here and add some, add some map shapes over here and run some stats, whatever stats that I want to run. I could add all that criteria over here. However, if I created a search over here that I wanted to run stats on, I could come over and run stats from scratch, just re-enter all that criteria. But it would be impossible for me to recreate that map shape. I mean, I could try to come close, but look at the shape that I created, or the shapes specifically that I created over here. It would be impossible. There's no way. If I spent a lot of time creating these very specific areas that I want to run stats on, it would be absolutely impossible for me to come over and try to recreate that in a start if I was starting a stat from scratch. So we made it very, very easy for you to pull over all of this information into the stats feature simply by selecting stats, charts, and you can see here it brings all that information over. So all I have to do now is run whatever stat I want to run. So maybe I want to see in this case, maybe historical sales by year for those areas. So you can see all the different years here. We're not going to get into stats, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to run stats on that specific criteria without having to re-enter it all in. All I had to do was bring it over from one of my searches. So that's the main reason why we have that stats feature there, is just to be able to bring over into your chart whichever criteria that you've already added. Beside that, refine. So this is a refine feature that allows me to refine down to specific properties that I'm looking for. So let's say, for example, well, I've only got 9 properties here, but let's say there's 2 properties here that I want to narrow my search down to. This is really handy if you have maybe hundreds of properties and you really only want a handful of them. But I'll use it just in this example. I've got 9 properties. I really just want those 2. I can narrow it down to just those 2. Just gets rid of all the unselected ones. Use my back button. I'm going to go back to my originals. And let's say I want to discard these 2 and keep the other 7. Well, of course, discard will do that. I keep my other 7. Here, let's undiscard those, bring those back. And sorting, well, you probably saw me do it earlier. If I want to sort by a specific column, this is going to sort from highest to lowest, lowest to highest, in this case, price. But I also have other sorting options as well. If I want to sort multiple columns, let's say price, maybe I have different statuses as well, I can do that. So all of the different columns that you have available to sort by, you can do here. Let me give you an example. So here, let's get rid of city. We don't want to sort by that. Let's do status first. This is a really good tool. If you want to sort, let's say, for example, I have multiple statuses. Let's say I've done a search for sold properties, active properties, and expired properties. So I have 3 different statuses. If I just run my search regularly, what's going to happen is I'm going to have some active properties, and then I'm going to have some sold, and then I'm going to have some more actives, and then I'm going to have some expireds, and then I'm going to have some solds. They're all just going to be mixed and mingled. What I'm saying here is I don't want them to be mixed and mingled. I want them to be sorted by status first. So what that's going to do, because it's an ascending order, or I can double click that and do descending order, but I'll keep it ascending. It's going to start with all of my active properties, A for active, all of my active properties in one group. Then it's going to have all of my sold properties, S for sold, in a second group. And it's going to have all of my expired properties as a third group. So I'm going to have 3 distinct groups because that's what I want sorted first are my statuses. Then I've just chosen to include price, but again, I can choose any fields here, but I'm going to choose price. So within all of my active properties, I want my prices to be from ascending is lowest to highest, or descending, double click it, highest to lowest price. But I'm going to do ascending, lowest to highest price, and within my active properties. Then within my sold properties, it's going to be lowest to highest price. And within my expired properties, it's going to be lowest to highest price. So this is just really how I want my fields to be sorted inside of my parent field. So again, add additional fields if you'd like to see additional sort orders, but that's really all that this sort option does. It just allows me to sort according to different hierarchies. And we'll jump over to save. And one of the other thing as a brand new user of Matrix, or again, just as a refresher, is the ability to save searches if you want to use them again in the future. Chances are you're going, if you haven't already, you're going to be creating a lot of different searches in the Matrix system. Now, what's really frustrating is if you create a search and you want to use it multiple times and you're not able to save it. So this is where we're able to save any search that we create to use again in the future. So you can see here all of the criteria that I use to create this search. And just to put a fine point on this, if I created this search with these specific areas, it'd be very difficult, if not impossible, for me to recreate this. So I don't want to have to do that every single time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this search so that I can use it again in the future. Again, maybe specifically for Dwayne, or maybe just for myself. So I'm going to create my search, and then once it's been created, I'm going to select New Save Search, and I'm just going to simply name it. And I'm going to call this Dwayne's Saved Search, something like that. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're creating it for a specific client, it's in your best interest to save it with that client, because that's going to make it very easy for me to find it later. When I have 100 different saved searches, it's going to make it very easy for me to find it underneath Dwayne's contact page. Now, I also have the option here of adding it to my home page or my dashboard for easy access, because as I mentioned, dashboard is for quick access to other features in the system. So this is a feature that I'm going to use often, and more specifically, this is a search that I'm going to use often. So I'm going to add this for quick access. I'm just going to save it. And of course, that already exists. Of course it does. So we're going to call this Dwayne Save Search number 2. All right, so now it's available on the dashboard, and more specifically underneath my Save Searches. So as I mentioned, we have a favorites Save Search widgets. Here it is here. So Dwayne Save Search number 2. And if I want to get to it very quickly, all I have to do is select, and it brings me right to it. So right to the results, and these are real-time results, so it's always going to change based on whenever I choose to run that search. And just to put a pin in this, if I go into Dwayne's page, I can see now underneath Dwayne Save Searches, he's got a brand new one where, of course, I can manage that from here. So if I want to rename it, if I want to delete it, if I want to change the criteria on it, anything that I want to do is easily accessible from his contact page. All right, so the very last, I say that in quote, very last section I want to show you as a brand new user, or again, just as a refresher, is the Add Edit section. So as I mentioned earlier on the dashboard, a quick way to access your existing properties and see information about it, that is from the My Listings section. You can also access some of your management functionality from the My Listings section underneath the My Matrix. So this is just going to give you the ability to, well, when you select it, just do different management functionality. So if you want to edit the property, manage the photos or the supplements or the attachments for that property, you can do that from here as well. But what I want to start by doing is showing you how to create a brand new property from scratch. So we're just going to go into Add, Edit, and then specifically Input. So if you're going to add a brand new property from here, just going to add New. And this is asking you what type of property that you want to add. So we're not going to go through all of these in detail in the interest of time. I'm just going to high level cover what each of these mean. So of course, these are your different property types. So based on whatever property type you want to add, that is the form that you are going to use. Now, of course, the comp only, those aren't going to go live on the system. That is for your comps, more for, again, your CMAs. If you do want to add a property that may not be listed on the system, this is essentially going to allow you to do that. So if you do want to add a property, we're not going to take you through that entire process, but it's very, very similar to the process that I'm about to show you, where you're going to have fields to add. And when you do submit the property, it is going to generate the property for you, but just not make it available on the system for other users to be able to find, nor do you want it to. This is for comps or for your use only. So if you, again, you do want to add that, for example, into a CMA, you're able to do that. What I want to do is I want to use, let's do, let's say a regular residential. And this has given me a few different options of filling my form. So the first one is filling it from Realist Tax Record. Again, outside of the scope of this presentation, but if I do want to pull some information from Realist Tax Records, I can do that, or I can fill it from the public records here, from public tax records, or if I want to clone it from one of my existing properties. So maybe there's a property development and I've listed maybe a handful of properties that are very, very similar to this property, and I don't want to have to go through the process of adding all of that information all over again. What I can do is I can leverage from one of my existing properties. And to do that, all I'd have to do is select it and add the MLS number for that property here. And then once, of course, I've added that, I can just clone that property. Now that's not going to add absolutely all the information, but it's definitely going to get me started. If I don't have the MLS number, I can just do a search for it on here as well. But typically, you'll have the MLS number available to clone it from. And the other option is starting with a completely blank slate. So we're not going to go through the entire process of adding all of the information. I actually set up a test property before this, so we're gonna jump over to that in a second here. But I did want to show you that starting with a blank slate starts you completely empty. So you're going to have all of your mandatory fields and all of your optional fields available for you. So if you're interested in what the mandatory fields look like, they are highlighted. So what that means, if you do see a highlighted field like that, that means it's absolutely mandatory. You cannot submit a property without the mandatory fields being added. All the optional fields, as the name suggests, are completely optional. So I just want to take you through and show you what the starting from blank form look like. But as I mentioned, in the interest of time, I already have one started. So to access your existing properties, all you're going to do is you can select the drop-down that should have your properties, or just like earlier, have the MLS number available. You can add it here and then just select edit, and that will take you right to the editing functionality. But for this one, we're just going to start here. And again, this gives you some options. You may not see all of the options that I have as an administrator, but you will have this option here, which allows you to go into the form and continue with the add edit process. Now, again, in the interest of time, I've gone through and I've added the majority of the mandatory fields. There are a couple here that I've left just to show you what that looks like. So again, we're not going to break, we just don't have the time to break down absolutely every single section here, but I will show you all the different sections that you do have available. And for the most part, you see these are optional information with the odd mandatory information thrown in there. And again, that just means that I'm not able to submit it until the mandatory fields are filled. Now, if you go through and you feel like you've added all the mandatory fields after trying with the intention of submitting your property, you just come down here, and down here on the button bar, there's a validate button, and you can select validate, and that will show you any sections that currently still have mandatory fields to fill. And in this case, attributes, I know exactly which field that is. So in this case, it's the cooling. So I'm just going to add for this property, these are the cooling methods. And if I jump over to a different section, you're going to see if that's correct. If there's no other mandatory fields that need to be filled out, it's going to automatically remove that, that indication. So that section is good. The only other one on this one is the map. Now, there's no marker here, but I know that that's the one. And the reason why I left this is because I wanted to emphasize that, well, not only is it mandatory to make sure that you have a map marker in place, but this is a feature that in my experience is not really done correctly. What a lot of agents tend to do is they tend to just map it based on the address. So they'll come in and they'll add their property address here, and they'll just say map based on address. So what I like to do is come in and I like to set and make sure that it's mapped manually. So here, let's just add the address here. So it's just another way of mapping by address. So here, let's zoom out so you can see it's here. One of my recommendations is if you are going to come in and do this step, which again, I really encourage you to do, if you are going to come in and manually do this, you want to make sure that the map marker is in the right location. Often, Google will come in and set the map marker according to where it thinks it should be, which a very high percentage of the time, it's absolutely correct. But what I like to do is go into the satellite view, and that way you can really get in there and see exactly where the property is. So in this case, I'm going to set it right on top of the property itself. Now, why is this important? This is important because if a searching agent, so let's say a buyer's agent is doing a search inside of Matrix, and as you saw earlier, agents are able to add tools, map shape tools around areas on the map. So if they add a shape around a specific area on the map and your map marker is not in the correct location, let's say, for example, your map marker was just maybe by default, maybe your map marker was just in this little area down here, then what's going to happen is it's going to, let's say, for example, it's here, it's going to not show up on the buyer's agent search because, again, maybe it's a very, very specific search around this particular area. Because your map marker is outside of the parameters of that, it may not show up. So you want to make sure that the map marker is absolutely exactly where it cannot be missed. And that's why I typically come over to the satellite view, just to make sure that that's done, and then set that, and done. So now it's set. And if I want to do my validate again, should be good. All right, so with my validation done, everything is exactly as it should be for me to submit live. However, I don't yet want to submit this live because I haven't added any photos or attachments or supplements yet. So if you want to submit it live at any point, you can, again, assuming your validation is correct. But at this point, I just want to save it. I just want to save it. I want to come back to it a little bit later because I know it's all ready to go with the exception of my photos and my supplements. So in this case, I want to go to my photos. Now, in this case, I've already added some photos, but let's say I want to add maybe a few additional ones before I submit it. So I'm just going to select to upload some photos. And you may see these little red outline around. That's just letting you know that the photos can be higher resolution. It's going to be fine. Everything's fine as it is. But if you have higher resolution photos, we definitely encourage you to use it. We'll scale it down, but you want to make sure that it's as high resolution as possible within, of course, these guidelines. And you also want to make sure that your description is there as well. So this is important. You want to make sure that not only for your clients, but also for Matrix coming on down the road, we're going to be using the property descriptions or the photo descriptions in a lot more useful way for searching. functionality, but for now, you want to make sure that these are all loaded with descriptions now, so you don't have to go back and do it in the future. So I might say something like exterior home, whatever you want to use to describe each of those photos. And then, of course, you can also open them up and do them from here as well. And then once you've done that, just certify that you have use of all of these photos. And then, of course, you can go ahead and add your supplements or any attachments that you'd like to include. So let's say I've got a PDF document that I'd like to include. So here's my name, and this is where I set the security of this. So if it's a public document, that means that it's going to be available for my for clients, not necessarily just my clients, but clients that look at this inside of their portal. So maybe a floor plan, just as an example. But if this is private, then that means that only other members are able to view this document. So that may be something that I only want to share on the MLS system with other agents. So depending on how you'd like to classify the security on that, for now, I'm going to upload it as is. And now you see I've got 2 documents that are associated with this. Perfect, I'm gonna save that. So I've got my photos, I've got my supplements. Now I'm gonna go back, continue editing my listing. So with all of my information correct, just do a final validation here. Yep, we're good. And I'm going to make sure that this is a test listing, so this does not appear on the MLS. So everything looks good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit the listing. And now it's submitted. So with all of that, now it is available for, well, even though it's a test listing, we're going to assume it's now available for everyone to view. It's got my photos and it's got my descriptions, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if I want to go back in, and let's say, for example, I want to manage these in any capacity, maybe the supplement or maybe the photos, for example. Well, let's go ahead and do that. So let's go choose the photo or the property that I want to manage, this one again. And we're back to my management section. Of course, if I want to go back and change any of the information in the fields, I would select it from here. But in this case, maybe just change some of the photos. And maybe I want to move this a little bit closer to the front. So all I have to do is click and drag them up into whatever order that I want to appear in and save. And that's it. So now I've updated, and again, that's now available for, in this case, me or any other members to view technically live on the system. All right, so the very, very last feature that I want to, again, bring to your attention if you are a brand new user of Matrix or if you're just as a refresher, is the help section. So this is where you're going to find help to some of your more commonly asked questions in Matrix. So just hover over top again of the utility menu and you'll see a help section available here. And these are all your individual help panels to the left. It's a great resource here is your Matrix video tutorial section. We also have a YouTube channel. So just select this. I really encourage you to join the YouTube channel. These are just very quick links to playlists on the YouTube channel. For example, if you're a Matrix agent, you can view that playlist, and that has all of the videos that are included for agents. For OneHome, again, as an agent, you will use OneHome a little bit different than your clients will. So these are videos that share that experience. And then we have some videos for your clients as well in this particular playlist here. But essentially, these are a collection of all of the videos. You can go to the playlist or you can go here. My recommendation would be to subscribe and go to the playlist. So this is just a collection of all the help from the specific features, but also for possibly some other MLS related help items here as well. There's also a search. So if there's something specific that you are looking for, you just type it in here, the keyword, and it should find any relevant help information that's relative to that specific keyword search. We also have something called the Learning Lab. So you may have seen this widget here on the home page. It's here it's called the Matrix Learning Lab. It's actually more than Matrix, so it's a little bit misleading, the name, but it is called the Learning Lab. And the Learning Lab is a resource that allows you to get help on a variety of different areas. So what you're going to do is you're going to select that widget, and that will open up the Learning Lab here, and it's going to take your credentials, whatever credentials you use to access Matrix, and pull you in. Now, I'm actually an administrator, so I pulled that over from a different area, but this is what you're going to see. So when you do access the Learning Lab, this is going to give you resources on pretty much everything you need to know about any of the products that you use. So for example, we've got Matrix, OneHome, again, more from the agent's perspective. MLS Touch, which again, we also have another presentation coming up for that. And Realist, we have a presentation coming up for that as well. Prospect CRM. So all of these different tools essentially that are available to you, you can find information on those in the Matrix Learning Lab. And if you scroll through, you can see, again, just videos and resources that are available for those specific areas. So if you haven't used the Learning Lab, I really highly encourage you to come in here and use it as a resource for additional help. And that is it. So we are at, again, the top of the hour. And first of all, I want to thank you for joining and for making it through the entire session. I also wanted to mention, just as a reminder, that this has been recorded and will be available. We'll make sure that that link gets out to you and is available for you to review at your own pace. Wanted to thank Keith in the background answering any questions that came through. If you would like to continue on this journey of ours and join the advanced session user tomorrow, feel free to sign up, join me at the same time, and we're going to be covering some more of the more advanced features of the Matrix experience. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.